No one will ever give you peace until you give it to yourself. Carl Jung. In the depths of your restless soul, a truth waits to be discovered. The peace you seek in others was always yours to give. We live in a world of endless seeking. We chase peace in the arms of lovers, in the validation of strangers, in the comfort of possessions, in the promises of tomorrow. We knock on every door except the one that matters most, the door to our own heart. Carl Jung understood this fundamental human paradox. He knew that our greatest suffering comes not from what we lack, but from our refusal to acknowledge what we already possess. Everything that irritates us about others, Jung observed, can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But tonight, we go deeper. Tonight, we explore the sacred territory of inner peace, not as a destination to reach, but as a homecoming to who you have always been. Picture this: you are a child again, crying in the darkness of your room. You call out for comfort, for someone to come and make the scary shadows disappear, and perhaps someone does come, a parent, a guardian, a protector. They turn on the light, they hold you close, they whisper that everything will be okay. For a moment you feel safe, for a moment peace descends, but what happens when they leave? What happens when the light goes out again? This is the story of our lives, isn't it? We spend decades recreating that moment of external comfort, seeking peace in the presence of others, in their approval, in their love, in their promises. We become addicted to the light that others bring, forgetting that we ourselves are luminous beings. Jung spoke of this with profound clarity. Your vision becomes clear when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. The dream is the belief that peace comes from external sources. The awakening is the recognition that peace has always been an inside job. But why do we resist this truth so fiercely? Why do we continue to seek in others what can only be found within ourselves? The answer lies in what Jung called our shadow, those parts of ourselves we have learned to deny, suppress, or project onto others. Our dependency on external peace is often a shadow manifestation of our deepest fear, the fear of our own power. You see, when we give others the responsibility for our peace, we also give them the power to take it away. This creates a comfortable illusion of powerlessness. I cannot be at peace because they won't love me. I cannot be calm because they won't understand me. I cannot be whole because they won't accept me. But what if the opposite were true? What if your peace was never dependent on their love, their understanding, or their acceptance? What if your wholeness was never at stake in their hands? This terrifies us, because if our peace is not dependent on others, then we have no excuse for our suffering. If our wholeness is not contingent on external validation, then we must take full responsibility for our inner state. Jung understood this terror. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming who we truly are requires us to stop being who we think we need to be for others. Deep within you, beneath the layers of conditioning, expectation, and learned helplessness, there exists a sanctuary. This is not a metaphor. This is the most real place that exists within your being. It is the part of you that remains untouched by the chaos of the world, unshaken by the storms of emotion, unchanged by the passing of time. Jung called this the self, with a capital S, to distinguish it from the small self, the ego, the personality that we present to the world. The self is your true nature, your essential being, your connection to the infinite. In this inner sanctuary, peace is not something you create or achieve. Peace is what you are. It is your natural state, your baseline, your home frequency. But we have forgotten how to access this sanctuary. We have become so accustomed to seeking peace in the external world that we have lost the map to our own inner territory. We have become strangers to ourselves. The most terrifying thing, Jung wrote, is to accept oneself completely. This terror comes from the recognition that if we accept ourselves completely, shadow and light, wounded and whole, human and divine, then we no longer need others to complete us. We no longer need external validation to feel worthy. We no longer need the world to change for us to be at peace. This is both liberating and lonely. It is the hero's journey of the soul. The journey to inner peace begins with a radical act. Treating yourself with the same compassion you would offer your dearest friend. This sounds simple, but for most of us it represents a complete revolution in our relationship with ourselves. We have learned to be our harshest critics, our most unforgiving judges, our cruelest enemies. We speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to another human being. We hold ourselves to standards we would never impose on others. We deny ourselves the grace we freely offer to the world. Jung observed, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed. But to overcome our inner conflicts, we must first acknowledge them with compassion rather than judgment. What would happen if you spoke to your wounded inner child the way you would speak to any child in pain? What would happen if you held your frightened parts with the same tenderness you would offer a scared animal? What would happen if you forgave your mistakes with the same mercy you would show a friend who had stumbled? This is not self-indulgence. This is self-respect. This is recognizing your own inherent worth, independent of your performance, your achievements, or your ability to please others. When you become your own source of compassion, you stop needing others to provide it. When you become your own source of understanding, you stop demanding it from the world. When you become your own source of acceptance, you stop requiring it from others to feel complete. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the pain of being disconnected from others. Solitude is the joy of being connected to yourself. Most of us fear solitude because we have never learned to enjoy our own company. We have become so accustomed to external stimulation, validation, and distraction that silence feels like death, stillness feels like emptiness, and our own presence feels like punishment. But Jung understood that solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the deepest form of connection possible. "Solitude is for me a fount of healing, which makes my life worth living," he wrote. "Talking is often a torment for me, and I need many days of silence to recover from the futility of words. In solitude, we meet ourselves without masks, without performance, without the need to be anything other than what we are. In solitude, we discover that we are enough, not because we have achieved enough or become enough, but because being itself is enough." This is the alchemy of solitude, transforming the fear of being alone into the joy of being whole. When you can sit with yourself in complete comfort, when you can enjoy your own thoughts, when you can find entertainment in your own imagination, when you can feel complete in your own presence, then you have found the source of all peace. Others may add to your joy, but they cannot create it. Others may share your peace, but they cannot give it to you. Others may witness your wholeness, but they cannot complete it. Self-reliance, in the deepest psychological sense, is not about independence from others or the rejection of community. It is about being so grounded in your own worth, so secure in your own identity, so at peace with your own being, that you can engage with others from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. Jung spoke of this as individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, independent of collective expectations and projections. "The privilege of a lifetime," he said, "is being who you are." But individuation is not a selfish process. Paradoxically, the more complete you become within yourself, the more you have to offer others. The more at peace you are with your own being, the more peace you can bring to your relationships. The more whole you feel on your own, the more authentic connection you can create with others. When you stop looking for others to complete you, you start seeing them as they truly are, rather than as projections of your needs. When you stop needing others to validate you, you start appreciating them for their own unique essence. When you stop depending on others for your peace, you start contributing to theirs. This is the psychological paradox of self-reliance. The more you depend on yourself for your emotional well-being, the more capable you become of genuine interdependence with others. Jung introduced the concept of the wounded healer, the idea that our deepest wounds can become our greatest sources of wisdom and compassion. But this transformation is only possible when we stop waiting for others to heal our wounds and take responsibility for our own healing. Every person who has ever hurt you, disappointed you, abandoned you, or failed to give you what you needed was also wounded. They were operating from their own unhealed pain, their own unmet needs, their own desperate search for peace and wholeness. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it explains it. And more importantly, it frees you from the expectation that they should have been different than they were. When you realize that everyone is doing the best they can from their current level of consciousness and healing, you stop waiting for them to be the source of your peace. You recognize that they were never meant to carry that responsibility. They were never equipped for that task. Your wounds are your responsibility to heal. Your peace is your responsibility to create. Your wholeness is your responsibility to discover. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you take full responsibility for your own healing, you become capable of helping others heal. When you find your own peace, you become a beacon of peace for others. When you discover your own wholeness, you can help others remember theirs. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But the transformation is only possible when both people are willing to take responsibility for their own inner chemistry." At its core, the journey to inner peace is a spiritual one. It is the recognition that you are not just a body with a soul, but a soul with a body. It is the remembering that you are not just a personality with consciousness, but consciousness expressing itself as a personality. Jung understood this spiritual dimension deeply. He knew that psychological healing was inseparable from spiritual awakening. The experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego, he observed. This defeat is not a destruction, but a liberation. The liberation from the small self that seeks peace in external validation to the true self that is peace itself. In spiritual traditions around the world, peace is not described as something to be achieved, but as something to be uncovered. It is not created but revealed. It is not earned but recognized. You are not seeking peace because you lack it. You are seeking peace because you have forgotten that you are it. This forgetting is not your fault. We live in a culture that teaches us to look everywhere except within ourselves for fulfillment. We are conditioned from birth to believe that our worth comes from external achievement, that our security comes from external approval, that our peace comes from external circumstances. But you are remembering now. You are awakening to the truth that Jung spent his life exploring. The kingdom of heaven is within you, not because you have created it there, but because that is where it has always been. The path to inner peace is not a complex psychological technique or spiritual practice, though these can be helpful. At its essence, it is simply the practice of presence, being fully here, now, with yourself, exactly as you are. Most of our suffering comes from our resistance to the present moment. We live in the past, reliving old hurts, or we live in the future, anxiously anticipating what might happen. We rarely live here now, where life actually takes place, where peace actually exists. Jung understood this. Your vision becomes clear when you can look into your own heart, but you can only look into your own heart in the present moment. The heart is not in the past or the future. It is here, now, beating in your chest, full of wisdom, full of love, full of peace. When you practice presence, you discover that this moment, exactly as it is already complete. You don't need to change anything, fix anything, or improve anything to be at peace right now. Peace is not a future state of being. It is your current state of being, beneath the noise of your thoughts and the turbulence of your emotions. This doesn't mean that you don't work to improve your life or that you become passive in the face of challenges. It means that you do so from a place of peace rather than from a place of anxiety. You act from wholeness rather than from neediness. You respond from wisdom rather than from reactivity. One of the most profound ways we avoid inner peace is by making our relationships into mirrors that reflect our wounds rather than our wholeness. We unconsciously choose partners who trigger our unhealed parts, friends who confirm our limiting beliefs about ourselves, and situations that reinforce our sense of unworthiness. Jung called this projection the unconscious process of seeing in others what we cannot or will not see in ourselves. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, he taught. But what if we reversed this process? What if we used our relationships as mirrors to reflect our wholeness rather than our wounds? What if we chose to see in others what we are learning to see in ourselves? Inherent worth, essential goodness, unlimited potential. This shift begins with changing the nature of our inner relationship. When you stop criticizing yourself, you stop attracting people who criticize you. When you stop abandoning yourself, you stop attracting people who abandon you. When you start treating yourself with love and respect, you start attracting people who treat you with love and respect. But more importantly, when you find peace within yourself, you stop needing others to be peaceful for you to be at peace. You can love someone who is anxious without becoming anxious. You can care for someone who is wounded without taking on their wounds. You can be present with someone who is suffering without suffering yourself. This is not detachment. It is the deepest form of love. It is loving others enough to allow them their own journey while maintaining your own center. It is caring enough to be fully present without losing yourself in their experience. There comes a moment in every person's journey when they must choose between the comfort of conformity and the courage of authenticity. This is the moment when you realize that finding peace within yourself might mean disappointing others, challenging expectations, or standing alone. Jung knew this courage intimately. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. This terror comes from the recognition that complete self-acceptance means you will no longer contort yourself to fit others' expectations. You will no longer sacrifice your truth to maintain false peace with others. This doesn't mean you become selfish or inconsiderate. It means you become honest with yourself and with others. It means you speak your truth with kindness but without apology. It means you set boundaries not to punish others, but to honor yourself. It means you choose authenticity over approval, even when authenticity comes with a cost. The courage to stand alone is not the courage to be isolated. It is the courage to be whole. It is the courage to be yourself so completely that you attract people who love the real you rather than people who love the mask you wear. When you have the courage to stand alone, you discover that you are never truly alone. You are connected to something much larger than yourself, to your own essence, to the source of all peace, to the truth that transcends all temporary circumstances. No discussion of Jung's approach to inner peace would be complete without addressing what he called shadow work, the process of integrating the parts of ourselves that we have denied, rejected, or disowned. We all have a shadow, aspects of our personality that we consider unacceptable, shameful, or dangerous. These might be our anger, our neediness, our sexuality, our ambition, our vulnerability, or our power. We learn early in life to hide these parts of ourselves, to present only the aspects that are deemed acceptable by our family, culture, or society. But what we deny in ourselves doesn't disappear. It goes underground, where it influences our behavior in unconscious ways. We might project our anger onto others and see them as angry. We might project our neediness onto others and see them as clingy. We might project our power onto others and see them as threatening. Jung understood that true peace requires the integration of our shadow. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, he wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. This doesn't mean acting out our shadow impulses without consideration for others. It means acknowledging them, understanding them, and finding healthy ways to express them. It means recognizing that our anger might contain important information about our boundaries. Our neediness might contain important information about our unmet needs. Our power might contain important information about our calling. When you integrate your shadow, you stop needing others to carry the parts of yourself that you cannot accept. You become whole, and from wholeness comes peace. One of the deepest sources of inner turmoil is our attachment to outcomes, to people, to circumstances being different than they are. We suffer not because of what is, but because of our resistance to what is. We suffer not because we don't have what we want, but because we cannot accept what we have. Jung spoke of this as the art of letting go. Resistance to the unpleasant situation is the root of suffering. But letting go is not passive resignation or spiritual bypassing. It is active acceptance, the recognition that this moment, exactly as it is the only moment you have to work with. When you let go of the need for others to be different than they are, you find peace with who they are. When you let go of the need for circumstances to be different than they are, you find peace with what is. When you let go of the need for yourself to be different than you are, you find peace with who you are. This doesn't mean you don't work for change, growth, or improvement. It means you do so from a place of acceptance rather than resistance, from love rather than fear, from wholeness rather than lack. The paradox of letting go is that when you stop grasping for peace, peace reveals itself. When you stop demanding that life be peaceful, you discover that peace was there all along, waiting beneath your demands. Through this journey of inner exploration, shadow integration, and letting go, something beautiful begins to emerge: your authentic self. This is not the self you think you should be, or the self others want you to be, or the self you've been conditioned to be. This is the self you actually are, beneath all the layers of protection, performance, and pretense. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you truly are. The privilege of a lifetime, he said, is being who you are. But this privilege comes with responsibility, the responsibility to honor your authentic self, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or misunderstood. Your authentic self is not perfect. It is not without flaws, wounds, or areas for growth. But it is real, it is honest, it is whole. And from this wholeness comes a peace that no external circumstance can disturb. When you are being authentically yourself, you don't need others to understand you to feel understood. You don't need others to approve of you to feel worthy. You don't need others to complete you to feel whole. You become a source of peace rather than a seeker of peace. You become a giver of love rather than a beggar for love. You become a creator of harmony rather than a victim of chaos. Here's what Jung understood that many miss. When you find peace within yourself, you don't just change your own life. You change the world around you. Peace is contagious. Wholeness is magnetic. Authenticity is inspiring. When you stop looking for others to give you peace, you start giving others permission to find their own peace. When you stop needing others to validate you, you start seeing and validating others more clearly. When you stop projecting your wounds onto others, you start seeing their essential goodness. Your inner peace becomes an invitation for others to find their own inner peace. Your self-acceptance becomes permission for others to accept themselves. Your authenticity becomes an inspiration for others to be authentic. This is not about becoming perfect or enlightened. This is about becoming real. This is about showing up as yourself so completely that others remember it's safe for them to show up as themselves. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." When you bring your authentic, peaceful self to your relationships, you create the possibility for authentic, peaceful connection. The journey to inner peace is not a one-time revelation, but a daily practice, a moment-by-moment choice to return to yourself, to return to presence, to return to the truth of who you are. Some days this will be easy. You will wake up feeling connected to your center, aligned with your truth, at peace with what is. Other days, it will be challenging. You will forget who you are, lose yourself in other people's expectations, or fall back into old patterns of seeking peace in external sources. This is not failure. This is human. The practice is not about being perfect. The practice is about returning. Every time you notice you've given your power away, you have the opportunity to take it back. Every time you notice you've abandoned yourself, you have the opportunity to come home. Jung understood this. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Becoming is a process, not a destination. It is a daily choosing, a moment-by-moment, remembering, a lifetime of returning to yourself. The practice might look like meditation, journaling, therapy, or spiritual study. But at its core, it is simply the practice of being present with yourself, honest with yourself, compassionate with yourself, and faithful to yourself. As you deepen in your own peace, you may discover a beautiful paradox. The more whole you become, the more you want to serve others. The more at peace you are within yourself, the more you want to contribute to peace in the world. This is not the desperate helping that comes from trying to fix others to avoid facing yourself. This is not the people-pleasing that comes from seeking validation through service. This is the natural overflow of wholeness, the recognition that your peace and others' peace are not separate, that your healing and others' healing are interconnected, that your freedom and others' freedom are one. Jung spoke of this as the transpersonal dimension of psychological development. When you individuate, when you become who you truly are, you don't become separate from others. You become more connected to others, but from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. You serve not because you need to be needed, but because love naturally expresses itself as service. You help not because you need to fix others, but because healing naturally expresses itself as healing. You give not because you need to get something back, but because peace naturally expresses itself as generosity. This is the ultimate paradox of inner peace. When you no longer need anything from others, you have everything to give to others. All of this brings us back to where we started, the recognition that the peace you seek in others was always yours to give. This is not a philosophical concept or spiritual platitude. This is the most practical truth you will ever encounter. Your peace is not dependent on your circumstances changing. Your peace is not dependent on other people behaving differently. Your peace is not dependent on the world becoming the way you think it should be. Your peace is dependent on one thing only: your willingness to remember who you are beneath the stories, beneath the wounds, beneath the conditioning. Your willingness to come home to yourself. This homecoming is not a place you go. It is a recognition of where you have always been. It is not something you achieve. It is something you uncover. It is not a future possibility. It is a present reality waiting to be acknowledged. Jung spent his life pointing us toward this truth. Your vision becomes clear when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. The dream is over. The seeking is over. The waiting is over. You are home. But awakening to this truth is only the beginning. Integration is the real work. Learning to live from this place of inner peace in a world that often seems chaotic, in relationships that can be challenging, in circumstances that may be difficult. Integration means remembering your peace when others are anxious. It means maintaining your center when others are reactive. It means staying connected to your truth when others pressure you to conform. This is not about becoming detached or indifferent. This is about becoming unshakable in your commitment to your own well-being, so that you can show up fully for others without losing yourself in their experience. Jung understood that integration is a lifelong process. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But the transformation can only be healthy and sustainable when you maintain your own center throughout the process. When you are integrated, you can love without losing yourself. You can care without carrying others' burdens as your own. You can be present without absorbing others' energy. You can serve without sacrificing your own well-being. This is mature love. This is conscious relationship. This is sustainable service. In the depth of your being, there is a place that was never broken, never wounded, never diminished by any experience you have had. Jung called this the self, the eternal, unchanging essence of who you are. This self is not affected by your failures or successes, your relationships or lack thereof, your achievements or disappointments. It simply is. It is pure being, pure awareness, pure peace. Every spiritual tradition points to this same truth in different language. Christians call it the kingdom of heaven within. Buddhists call it Buddha nature. Hindus call it Atman. Jung called it the self. But regardless of the language, the truth remains the same. You are not just a person seeking peace. You are peace itself, temporarily forgetting its own nature. This forgetting is not permanent. This forgetting is not punishable. This forgetting is simply part of the human experience, and the remembering, the return to your true nature, is always available, always possible, always just one moment of presence away. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But we can go deeper than understanding. We can go to recognition. We can go to remembering. we can go home. As we near the end of this exploration, let us return to Jung's profound insight that opened our journey. No one will ever give you peace until you give it to yourself. This is not a teaching about self-reliance in the ordinary sense. This is not about becoming independent or isolated or self-sufficient in the ego's understanding of these terms. This is a teaching about sovereignty, spiritual sovereignty, emotional sovereignty, psychological sovereignty. It is about recognizing that your essential nature is peace, and that no external circumstance can change this fundamental truth about who you are. When you give yourself peace, you are not creating something new. You are uncovering something eternal. You are not adding to yourself. You are subtracting everything that is not yourself. You are not becoming peaceful. You are recognizing that you are peace. This recognition changes everything. It changes how you show up in relationships. It changes how you respond to challenges. It changes how you treat yourself and others. It changes your entire relationship with life itself. From this place of inner peace, you love differently, not from neediness but from fullness. You serve differently, not from compulsion but from overflow. You live differently, not from fear but from trust. With this understanding comes a sacred responsibility, not to others, but to yourself. The responsibility to honor your own nature, to protect your own peace, to maintain your own center regardless of what is happening around you. This responsibility cannot be delegated, it cannot be outsourced, it cannot be avoided. It is yours, alone. But it is not a burden, it is a privilege. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you truly are is peace itself. This doesn't mean you will never feel sad, angry, afraid, or hurt. These are human emotions, and they have their place in the full spectrum of human experience. But beneath all emotions, unchanged by all emotions, your essential nature remains peaceful. When you take responsibility for maintaining connection to this essential nature, everything else becomes workable. Every challenge becomes an opportunity for deeper self-knowledge. Every relationship becomes a chance to practice unconditional love. Every moment becomes a possibility for awakening. This is where our exploration comes full circle, but it is not an ending. It is a beginning. Every moment offers you the opportunity to choose peace over conflict, presence over distraction, authenticity over performance, love over fear. These choices are not always easy, but they are always available. The path to inner peace is not a complex spiritual practice. It is a series of simple choices, made moment by moment to remember who you are. Jung understood this. Your vision becomes clear when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. You're awakening now, you are remembering now, you are coming home now, not to a place but to yourself, not to a future state, but to your present reality, not to something you must become, but to something you have always been. The peace you have been seeking in others, in circumstances, in achievements, in relationships. This peace has always been here, waiting patiently for your recognition, your acknowledgement, your return. You are not broken and in need of fixing. You are not incomplete and in need of completing. You are not lacking and in need of fulfilling. You are whole. You are complete. You are peace itself. And now you know. In the silence between these words, in the space between your thoughts, in the stillness of your own being, peace waits for you. Not as a reward for your seeking, but as the truth of your nature. Not as something to achieve, but as something to remember. You came into this world as peace, you will leave this world as peace. And every moment in between is an opportunity to live from peace, to share peace, to be peace. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but the journey to inner peace begins with stopping, being still, and recognizing that you are already home. Carl Jung's final wisdom echoes through time. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But on the other side of this terror lies the most beautiful truth. When you accept yourself completely, you discover that you are, and have always been, enough. If this reflection spoke to your soul, if these words found their way to a place in your heart that has been waiting to be seen, to be heard, to be honored, you are not alone. This understanding, this remembering, this return to yourself, it is happening everywhere, in hearts just like yours, in souls just like yours, in beings who are ready to stop seeking and start being. Subscribe if you feel called. Share if you feel moved. But most importantly, remember, the journey to yourself has no end, only deeper beginnings. You are not alone. The peace you seek is already here. The journey is just beginning.